called power grid. The reason we chose it was because none of the technology in this room, none of the technology you're going to talk about would matter one iota without reliable electric power. Imagine it for a minute if I told you 1 year from now, only 2 of us in this room would be dead. Because according to the United States Congress, Commission on Catastrophic Failure of the Power Grid, 90% of Americans would die within 1 year of a catastrophic failure. That's 286 million dead. So most of us would end up right there. Our grid is vulnerable to a variety of attacks, and we'll go through that. What we want to do here is just to raise awareness. Most people don't know anything about this for some crazy reason, and we want to raise awareness that you can spread the word, and maybe as a result, something might get done by those in power. This is a large and complex topic. We're just going to hit the high points. What is the U.S. power grid? We have to focus on the United States because that's what the most information we have is about. This shows the major, what they call high voltage transmission lines. It's divided into 3 sectors: the Eastern, the Western, and the Texas. And they don't share power across each other very well. I had a film to show you, but we don't have time. Part of the power grid that's critical, in addition to the high transmission lines, are what they call substations, and they contain large power transformers, step-up transformers, step-down transformers, and distribution transformers. They take high voltage and turn it into low voltage to distribute it to this computer and that camera and those lights. In a nutshell, the generating plant creates electrical energy from natural resources: coal, oil, gas, nuclear, wind, solar. It takes physical energy, turns it into electrical energy. That goes in at low voltage, goes into a step-up transformer. Has to be stepped up to high voltage so the voltage can be carried across great distances on those high voltage transmission lines. Then it goes into a substation where there's a step-down transformer and it reduces the voltage down somewhat. Then it goes into lower voltage transmission lines to a distribution, the smaller one, a distribution substation, which contains yet another set of transformers that lower the voltage to where we can use it here. And that's the result of all this from space, the U.S. power grid. Now imagine right now the power going out and staying out for a year. What would you do? No lights, no cell phones, no airplane flights. If it was an EMP and it was strong enough, there'd be no cars, because they'd fry the electronics in all modern cars, anything past about mid-80s. So you'd be left with your feet to get around with and your wits to survive by. Past disasters in this country, like Hurricane Katrina, tell us that society, it doesn't last long when things go south. Estimates are that in the urban areas, in the big cities, about 3 days worth of food and water. And after that, it's survival of the fittest. As I said, it's not a bunch of crazies that say 90 people would die. It's the experts. 90% of the people would die. It's the experts that testified in Congress. And that's a pretty big statement. But we'll show evidence that backs it up. That it's really a weather of when more than if. There are 2 threats to the grid, 2 categories of threats: natural and man-made. The natural one is called a solar flare or geomagnetic disturbance, and Sacketh will talk to you about that.
So, I am going to talk about the natural threat to our power grid. So, what is the natural threat to our power grid? Those are the solar storms and the flare, also called as geomagnetic storms. So, the sun, the giver of the life, is a direct threat to our power grid. We will explain how. The sun regularly shoots off the geomagnetic storms in every direction around the space. So, when this happens, one of these flares, geomagnetic flares, directly hits Earth, Earth's magnetic sphere with exactly the same EMP type when of effect as it were a nuclear bomb. So, how does these geomagnetic storms occurs? So, we can see in the image that this geomagnetic storm occurs when there is an effective energy exchange from solar wind into the space environment around the Earth, and this creates disturbance on the Earth's magnetosphere. We can see that the disturbance is created to the Earth's electromagnetic waves. So, which could the disturbance could be currents, plasmas, and as well as the Earth's fields, magnetic fields. So, now what are these solar wind disturbances? So, there are two types of solar wind disturbances. One is coronal mass ejections and other one is high speed solar wind streams. So, what is coronal mass ejections? In coronal mass ejections is the billions of tons of plasma from the sun ejects into the space. So, this plasma ejected from the sun consists of electric particles which strikes the Earth's electromagnetic sphere and creates disturbance inside the Earth. So, we can see the coronal mass ejection through in the image which shows that ejection from the sun. So, this when this ejection is directed towards the Earth, the shock wave of traveling mass of these energy particles cause a geomagnetic storm. So, these geomagnetic storms can disturb the radio transmissions and cause damage to the satellites and electric transmission lines, which in result makes the long lasting power outages. The coronal mass ejections typically reaches Earth in 1 to 5 days after leaving the sun. Now, the another type of solar disturbance is high speed solar wind streams. These solar wind streams emits from the coronal holes, where the fast wind interacts. We can see in the image the fast wind interacts with upstream slow wind, which creates the disturbance in the Earth's magnetosphere. And those are also called as co-rotating interaction regions. And how these solar storms have caused damage on Earth in the past. So, we can look out the 1859 Carrington storm event, which caused so much damage to the Earth's power grid, US power grid. So, it was recorded 1859 Carrington event was recorded as the largest solar storm which occurred on record. A solar coronal mass ejection hits the Earth's magnetosphere. The electric currents produced by these coronal mass ejections strikes the Earth's magnetosphere and enters into the Earth, and those strikes have been strike the telegraph systems all over the US, all over the North America, which caused failed in giving the telegraph operators electric shocks. So, this shut down the telegraph systems in the USA. Now, the other storms would be discussed by Suhas.
In 1921, just 62 years after the 1859 event, another solar flare caused damage to the New York railway system. on May 13th, 1921, entire signal and switching system of New York Central Railway was shut down. Electric lights did not seem to be have noticeably affected. So, some solar storms have more effects here on other than others. Still we much more susceptible because we have widely used very sensitive electronics than we did back then. 2012 solar storm. The solar storm of 2012 was unusually large and strong coronal mass ejection. This solar system missed the Earth with a margin of approximately 9 days. The strength of eruption was comparable to the solar flare caused in 1859 Carrington event, which caused damage to the electrical equipment worldwide. This eruption tore through the Earth's orbit and hit the Stereo A spacecraft. The spacecraft anyhow survived the encounter, and it provided a valuable information to many of the researchers. These are the storms which occurred till now, and there are also 3 ways man can attack our grid. Man-made threats are EMP attack, physical attack and cyber attack. This is also EMP attack. What is an EMP? EMP is a electromagnetic pulse. This is which is also called an transient electromagnetic disturbance. This EMP could be a natural occurrence like the solar flare we just talked about, or it can be man-made and can occur as radiated magnetic field, like a nuclear bomb exploded in atmosphere over the US, and an EMP could be a most significant threat to the US and as well as other countries, because our food, our water supplies, our communication, banking, hospitals, all these are depend on the power grid. Recently, like attention was brought to US of generating EMPs by detonating a nuclear weapon in the orbit above the USA. And the next part is carried away by my friend Karthik.
Physical attack. How terrorists are involved in this substation physically. It's like the main aim of the terrorist on a country, attack on a country is to destroy the country's economy, so that one of the attacks of our power grid are done by substation terrorist organization. The terrorist attack on power station can easily destroy the US power grid, which is in turn destroy the US economy. As Joseph Foley said, we are very much dependent upon the electricity, and what if terrorist attacks on the transformer and destroy our electric power, so that the organizations which are mostly dependent on electricity will shut down. It's like the economy of the organizations comes down with the power cut. And let us discuss an example like what happened in April 2013. On the power station was occurred in California, where some of the people just snipped into the basement and they just cut down the telephone wires, cables, and after a few minutes the terrorists just started firing at the transformers by destroying it. And if the one transformer is destroyed, in the same way 17 transformers got destroyed, and this is how they usually attack on the transformers. power substation are in US. There is like 55,000 substations are in US, and they are unprotected. If an attack less than 10 could cause a nationwide power grid. If what if the terrorists just attack 10 power stations at the same time? It will be a huge loss to the country. And each station is critical component of our electric grid, and the major target is for attack. As we can see, if this is destroyed, it's great loss. Large power transformer, step up and step down, and failure of the single unit can cause a temporary service interruption and lead to damage. And if, as I said, they can recover the transformer, or they can give the power supply back, but it takes some time, and if it takes a long, it's a huge loss. And what do you mean by the step up transformers and what step down transformers? The step up transformers is nothing but increase voltage from power plants to carry power over long distances. We can find these substations in almost outside the place. They have to pass the electricity to the long distances. We use like step up transformers, and step down transformers are decrease the voltage from transmission levels to distribution levels, which are usable in homes, etc. Cyber attack will be explained by J.C. Foley.
How are we doing on time? Perhaps the most likely attack, according to our research, is a cyber attack. One of my sources compared our power grid. He talked about a substation being attacked, and one substation going down is no problem. It's when multiple substations go down. The way the power grid works is it's a delicate balancing act. When this area requires more power, it's directed from an area that requires less. It's supply and demand and being balanced. And what does that balancing act is the computer system. One of my sources likened it to a balloon attached to an air tank with thousands and thousands of valves. If just one of those thousands of valves lets too much air into the balloon, it explodes. If just one of those thousands of valves doesn't let enough air into the balloon, it collapses. Why so many valves? There's 3,200 power companies in the United States. Times, however, every employee, 3,200, every single employee has a laptop or a desktop or a PDA or a smartphone with which they communicate to that computer system. So that provides countless doorways into the cyber world of the electric grid. One of the key things that is of a concern is that big power companies have a lot, and there's several of them. They have a lot of money, so they can afford expensive firewalls and experts and massive IT departments to fight off cyber attacks. But there's only a few of those, and there's hundreds of small companies. It's the companies that we write our checks to pay the bill every month. They don't have firewalls. They can't afford them. And I put Sony up here because Sony had 42 separate computer systems protecting their information from hackers. But yet, not a year or so ago, North Korea hacked in and got into their secret information. So even if it is protected by a large company, it doesn't always work. And certainly all the employees of all the small companies and all their handheld devices, it's an infinite number of possibilities to get in, and they're all connected to the same computer system. Here's a list of the main culprits that would love to nothing more than bring us down: Russia, China, Iran, ISIS. All right, the NSA, everybody know who the NSA is? National Security Agency. Our electronic spies, the guys that are reading his text just like he is and doing all that different stuff. Well, they say that Russia and China already have cyber weapons implanted in our computer grid, computer control of the power grid to set off like a time bomb should we provoke them. With all those ways in to our grid, it just takes one. One hacker can kill as many people as vast armies of the past couldn't. I haven't. It can kill as many as all the nuclear weapons in the world. So, the facts presented here demonstrate that the United States power grid is indeed extremely vulnerable to a number of attacks. Our research indicates that a major disruption of the grid is more a matter of if than when. Solar flares are natural and recurrent. We mentioned 3, 1859, 1921, and 2012, but that's just some of them. 1972, 1989, 2005. Isn't it just a matter of when? One of those is going to hit us. And if it does, the lights go out. No two ways about it. It's done it before. The telegraph lines went down, and they certainly weren't as sensitive as this. So common sense, history, and science seem to tell us that it's very likely. Is it likely that ISIS or another similarly minded terrorist group would slip across our porous southern border, AK-47s in hand, and shoot up the large power transformers like Karthik was talking about? Now, the likelihood of this happening is in debate. What is not in debate is the fact that we're doing nothing to protect them. Perhaps the possibility of an EMP, a nuclear EMP, is not that prominent as well. Would Iran or North Korea dare to do such a thing? Well, I don't know, but if you take them at their word, we're the great Satan. They have a self-stated goal of bringing about the apocalypse. An EMP would be a good way to start the end of days. Of course, our military capabilities might have some effect on that in preventing it. But we don't have anything like that for cyber attacks. The computer systems are wide open. So anyway, our research shows that there are innumerable ways in which to harm our grid. And like we say, Russia and China already have ways set up inside, supposedly, that can do that. The same is true of EMPs, whether they're from the sun or from some evil human endeavor. In short, our grid is essentially naked to any kind of attack, and we're doing nothing to clothe it in protection. I'm going to ask you to look real closely at these images because they'll show a staggering disparity in response by the people in power in this country. Tragically, terrorists used 4 aircraft on September 11th, 2001 to kill several thousand, 3,000 Americans. Any's too many, and that was tragic. Our nation in response created a massive bureaucracy called the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And now they grope up children in wheelchairs and women, toddlers in training pants. We fought 2 wars in Afghanistan at the cost of trillions of dollars and thousands of lives. TSA, so invasive when we travel, so we can safely travel, I guess, the not-so-friendly skies. Yet, our research indicates that threats, physical attack, cyber attack, millions of potential hackers, crazy nations with nukes to use in an EMP attack, our magnificent yet naturally dangerous sun, any one of which could mean that all over again. What does all that added up equal? What's our response this time? Nothing. Nothing really, because nothing really is being done about it. Life has changed dramatically since 9/11, when just 3,000 Americans were killed. Nothing has changed or is being done to change anything in the face of the possibility of tens of millions of Americans being killed. So what can you do beyond hoarding gold coins or hiding freeze-dried food in your basements? The answer is not much alone. Together, collectively, now that we're aware of this very real threat of impending doom, we can spread the word, tell our friends, tell our families. Not just America. India has a power grid too. The whole world has a power grid. And Pakistan has nuclear bombs. Eventually, maybe, when enough people insist that their elected officials take action, we'll reach a tipping point, which is, I think, how we started this semester. A good way to end it. And authorities will act because we demand that they act. We are representative democracies, both of our countries. So that's what we'd like you to do. Spread the word, learn about it, because it's a threat that they don't talk about that is extremely dangerous. Any questions or comments?
Any questions? Let's give them hand.